Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Today, we are talking about from obstacle to adversity. I'm going to be starting us off today. My partner in crime will actually be joining us here very soon. She is up against an obstacle, and she's actually working her way in order to be joining us today. So we really wanted to talk about this subject and kind of start off with a couple of questions. And this is kind of to get your mindset into the journey of what we're going to be talking about here. So I have a couple of questions for you. So how close do you feel you are to your dreams or goals? Do they feel a million miles away? What's in between you and them right now? And this is planting a seed right now. I'm going to be asking you some questions a little bit later and asking for your feedback on this. And just curious, when we talk about obstacle, for me, it's that thing that is immovable. It's that piece that is something that you can't get past. And so, what is it? What is the obstacle for you right now? What's the perceived obstacle for you? And with that in mind, are you the same person that you were at the beginning of last year and how you showed up last year? And what will make this particular year moving forward the one that's going to separate your life from the rest? So many times we can actually succumb to things like overwhelm and anxiety and sabotage and self-sabotage. So if we really focus on the obstacle, some schools of thought actually believe that the obstacle is the way. And others believe that if you only focus on the obstacle, then that's always what you hit. So that's some of the things we're going to be teasing out today, is how we shift from the mindset of things that are going to be in our way versus these are the challenges that will help hone us to become the next version of ourselves. So my name is Michael Dancloffs of Elevate Your Best, and I am a life vision outfitter, a certified life book leader. I'm also certified in Notion Essentials as well. And I really like challenging people to find what their next best is, not just showing up 100% every time, which is fantastic. I totally believe in always do your best, one of the 4 agreements. But I also believe that in between those tests, if you will, when you're showing up at your best, we have an opportunity to practice, to refine, to focus. Suzanne and I have been coming together to do these sessions now. This is going to be our third full year at this point. So we've actually covered many different subjects, things like identity and beliefs and gratitude and joy and game. And this year's a little bit different. This year, we're actually looking at, what are the actions we need to take in order to actually move from where we are to where we want to go. And that's why we're starting here with this concept of obstacles and transmuting them into the concepts of an adversity, something that is a challenge, something that we can work towards overcoming. And this is really so we can get the idea of where we want to go and determine what that gap is, and then start tackling the pieces that are going to get us through that gap one step at a time. So today we're going to be talking about obstacle, which is the distance between that which is intimidating between us and accomplishing those results, those goals, those experiences, those feelings, those that vision statement that many of us have actually built for where we want to go in our lives, and it blocks us from where we are meant to be. So we're also going to look at why we avoid discomfort and hard things, and really looking at knowing that this is the way. This is how we actually grow and hone. We're also going to examine the identity and beliefs that undermine the fundamental truth of who we know we are meant to be. And lastly, we're going to be talking about a couple of tips and tools to bridge this fixed mindset into a growth mindset. Many of us who are here and maybe watching this, maybe you have done the Lifebook process, maybe you haven't. Maybe you've done another vision setting program. so many of us are on this personal development journey. But if we're still stuck in that fixed mindset, I'm here and I will always be here, there isn't an opportunity for growth. If we always stay in our comfort zone, it is that fixed mindset. It is actually being static. It is being stagnant. It is actually being in a rut. And being in that rut, at least for me, has never led me on a path that where I wanted to go. More often than not, it tended to have me go off the road, down the mountain, and crumble down at the base of the mountain instead. So for each of you here, I'd like you to imagine what that vision looks like for your life, that goal that you actually believe will actually be that next step in your evolution. Really hold that in your mind. Imagine that you are standing in that spot, that you are actually surrounded by the people that you actually choose, that you're actually doing work that has you feel fulfilled, that you are actually happy with the state of your health, your intellectual life, your spiritual practices. Be standing in that space where you are at that peak, whatever you set that to be. And hold that in your mind. Actually have it as if you can touch it. You can hold it in your hand. And now that you've got that there, what is between you and it? What is that obstacle? What is that barrier between where you are now and living that on an everyday basis? Each of us can actually really hold that space and actually be able to see that obstacle, because we are up against it every single day, and it's that thing that we avoid. Now I want you to take your vision and put it just past that obstacle, just past that boundary, just past that barrier. And what does the freedom of that feel like to you? Knowing that you are sitting in that space and you've just overcome that barrier that's been in your way for a day, a week, a month, a decade. How does that boost your spirit, your liveliness, your awareness? What does that feel like? You just climbed that mountain and got to the top and put your hands up and said, yes, I got to the top. How does that feel? Are you that person now that's standing at the top of the mountain? Are you still trudging up the side of the mountain, wondering why you're slipping down? Are you actually trying to find the shortcut, the trolley that's going to get you to the top, rather than having to actually take the steps yourself? Are you actually willing to actually take that one step at a time, one trail at a time, one experience at a time to get to the top? And what steps are you willing to pay the price for in order to get there and to take each of those steps? Thank you for going on that journey with me, because this is what we're going to be talking about. And I'd like to introduce Suzanne here, who has joined us. Thank you, Suzanne. Seems that adversity has actually struck again. So thank you for getting here and being with us on this beautiful Sunday morning.
The universe is right on cue. And good morning, everyone. My name is Michael and Suzanne Buchanan, and I am the grateful co-pilot that has been working with Michael for the past almost 2 years. And like that visualization, we are always focused on where we're going. We're always focused on the goal. And sometimes that path in between, it looks daunting. And today is about that space in between, because Those who only look on the other side, those are the ones that they don't always get there. We want them to, but they don't always get there because they're unwilling to look at the obstacle that's right there in front of us. So today we're gonna kind of ease into that little space, and we're gonna unpack it and see what's there. Thank you for the exercise, Michael. I loved it. I came in and everybody's in scene. So it was beautiful. So did you guys have any feedback from that exercise? What did you see?
I liked it. I like, if you don't mind, I think Lucy is not visible, so I've just jumped in. Hi, I'm Marek. Nice to meet you.
Beautiful. Nice to meet you.
I liked it. I think the idea of avoiding obstacles as though the road would always be smooth is, I mean, intuitively makes sense that you'd be in denial of where you are at that moment. And so, all we have is the present. And if you don't enjoy it, you think it's always going to be somewhere else, the enjoyment, then you're not fully alive, or at least that's what it feels like to me. So yeah, I've been going for joy recently. I have a little note here that reminds me joy. I have to remind myself.
We have to. I love it. And we're going to talk about that. Like, how do you keep that vision present and in front of you, literally? And here you are with the perfect example of, you got it on a Post-it note. Put it all over. Put it where you need it to be.
I think I'm now, if I'm not mistaken, the only participant aside from the two of you who will feel a little on the spot, but I'll hang in there with you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So, and we are actually streaming this right now on YouTube and on LinkedIn as well. So we have a couple of people that can
so there might be more
that state of,
well, yes. That makes me necessarily feel better, but
and you're welcome to just hang out and don't feel pressured at all. Please, we will not put you on the spot ourselves.
Thanks.
Awesome. So as we kind of unpack this, some of our questions really are challenging us to actually, like you mentioned, the idea of, if the path, I read this quote, or someone actually read it to me probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it said that if the path is laid out perfectly in front of you, it's not your path, it's somebody else's. That you get to define what steps you're going to take, and you can take a left turn or a right turn or turn around and go back anytime you need to, but that path isn't always going to be easy. In fact, if you're going to be growing, if you're going to be changing, if you're going to be getting somewhere different than where you are, it's going to require you to go through the obstacle, to take on the adversity and embrace it. So in some question, though, what I'm curious about at this point is, what are you actually avoiding at this point? Now, what is that thing that you're actually like fidgety and squirmy and just outright, it's like, put the blinder on and I can't see it. Nope, I'm not going to look at that. One of the books that Suzanne and I were talking about as we were preparing for this was a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And it tends to be those things that we are avoiding the most that is going to be where we're going to grow the most.
Absolutely. You've probably heard it said, I know for those of you who are in the personal growth and development communities, you hear some of the similar concepts and threads in many places. And one of them that's, the last 5 years I've heard of quite a bit is, your mess is your message. And the other concept in that, and we'll unpack that one, is that, usually your greatest potential is on the other side of that obstacle in your way. And when we talk about you visualizing yourself in the future, and Michael asks you, are you that person? The truth is, that person in the future isn't exactly who we are now. If we were that person now, we'd be there. There is still growth ahead. And it's up to us to fear not, be brave, and to look at that distance in between that future and where we are now, and unpack what that journey looks like. And it's not that you have to know. We're not saying you have to have ESP or be able to sense every step you'll need to take. But it is that willingness to begin. And there are tips and tools to help you do that. And one of the questions, that Michael asked, what he just asked was like, what is making you feel uncomfortable? What's making you feel squirmy? Or maybe it's even more direct and there's a block there. And maybe it's sitting down to look at your checkbook. Maybe it's the thought of that difficult conversation you need to have. What is that thing in your life right now that you're running from? And like I said, it doesn't have to be huge. Maybe it's a small thing, but it's important. And usually that uncomfortable feeling and squirminess is the direction we need to go. And it doesn't always, that doesn't always sit well or feel good, but sometimes we got to do things. That's the adulting part. That, it's not always comfortable, but that's okay. And the other question that Michael and I asked when we were talking about this, what if you don't believe you can be that person on the other side? Or what if you don't believe you'll ever make it there? What if you're worried that journey between where you are now and where you were meant to be is so far, you feel like you'll never get there? So Michael, what did we say about that when we asked?
Well, I think that, as we constantly come back to, beliefs tend to be the core of just about all the stuff that we work on. And in some cases, it is that premise, those underlying beliefs that are underneath everything else. And it's that idea of, it's partly that having faith that you are heading in the right direction. That and that idea of, I only know this one next step sometimes is all that I know about. And then it's the idea that as you're on a journey, that you move to the next landmark you can see, and then from there you take a view of the landscape and then figure out what the next step is from there. You've got this long vision. Yes, I want to go from here in New Hampshire over to Los Angeles. And the one of the stories that I've heard is that an airplane taking off from New York and heading to LA most of the time is off course. And it keeps course correcting over and over time. And it will eventually land at the right airport. But most of the time we're testing based on what we can see around us in that moment. We've got technology and we've got radar, we've got all kinds of communication tools in order to make that process better now, but it's not perfect. And I think that, if we have a sense of, I'm heading in the right direction, many times that is, for me at least, has been enough belief to tackle that next hard thing, that next difficult challenge.
Yeah, I think that's so important, guys. Like, listen to that and imagine pilots flying in fog, right? Yes, they have instruments and technology to help them, but sometimes we have to take one step ahead. And sometimes we actually don't see the landscape. So, as Michael said, in those cases, it's important for us to know that we're at least in the right direction, right? That part, that's your spatial orientation. For us, it's our emotional GPS. We were built with an internal GPS system, and that's our emotional processing. That is our guidance system. So we can use that in the interim. But when people say, do I have to believe, do I have to know it's going to work to move forward? The answer is no. No. But you do have to take that first step. And what usually happens is that positive reinforcement, where you take the risk. You're not sure it might work. You do it anyway, to the best of your ability. And yeah, that's a little risk. But we haven't jumped off the mountain. We've taken the first step, right? And what happens is we take that first step and we cringe because we're afraid what's going to happen. And we realize we're still here. We're okay. Let's go. Let's do it again. Right? And so what we have is a series of steps, that momentum that's going to build. And it's not that it's easy. It's not that you know it's going to work. It's that you're heading in the right direction. You feel your internal GPS is helping you know that you're in the right direction. And the other thing that we discussed is, if it's new, be willing to suck. Yeah. So you may not always be good at what you're trying that's different. You may not be good at what you're growing into. You might not know how to run this new business and have any tools. You may not know how to start that difficult conversation. You may not know how to break that news to someone that you have to say that might hurt them or break their heart. It's okay. It'll be all right. You take the steps anyway.
I want to expand on that a little bit too. Is I'm not sure at what age we decide that we're not going to suck at that next thing anymore. You know, when you're riding a bike, when you're learning to read or write or speak, or if it's your first language or your fifth, at some point we decide, well, I'm going to be good at everything, and I'm not going to do anything I'm not already good at. And at the same time, is that comes back to that idea of a fixed mindset, that I'm only going to do the things that I'm good at. Yeah. And yet, if we don't experiment, if we don't actually reach out and actually attempt that new thing, we won't know if it's going to be able to build into a skill or a strength. So, and I know, at least for me, that I've got so much, by nature, I'm a learner. I like to learn new things. And at the same time, there's so much in the world right now that we can learn. It's like, where do you start? And for me, that tends to be one of my biggest obstacles, is that analysis paralysis, that idea of there's so many choices that it's choice overload. And that's why I think that a lot of the personal growth tools can be so difficult, because there are so many options. Especially, I mean, right now I'm having a conversation with someone who's in Seattle and Atlanta, and I'm here in New Hampshire. And 15 years ago, that wasn't easy. It was possible, but 100 years ago, that was impossible. 150 years ago, we have access to so much knowledge and so many abilities to learn at this point, that can become the obstacle, that there's too many choices. So that's why I think we need to come back to what Suzanne was just talking about, is tapping into what actually brings you that joy that Merrick mentioned earlier. When do you actually feel that excitement going into something that you know is going to suck, that you know is going to be difficult, that you know you may actually have some growing pains afterwards, that authentic overwhelm, that authenticity hangover of having that conversation, that deep conversation about something that is difficult for you to talk about. But it requires us to it's, in some ways for me, it's tapping into that feeling of, this is where I want to be on the other side. And then I'm willing to trudge through the mud in order to get there. That I'm willing to actually pay the price of the complexity now for the simplicity on the other side.
Michael, what do you think is the impetus? Well, think about one of the worst moments where you were, or, the strongest moments where you were facing an obstacle, you felt overwhelmed, you weren't sure you could overcome. And what was the impetus that helped you change your life? Was it that sometimes it's, if I stay here, it's looking really bleak, or I know there's someone, this doesn't feel like me. What was it that registered that helped you come out of where you were?
So I'd say for me, at least in that darkest place that I've been, it's partly, it was this idea of, I'm acting in a way that is different than what I say I am. I wasn't in integrity anymore with who I believed I was, who I believed I was versus the actions that I was taking. And it's like, and unfortunately the universe has this, my experience of the universe has been that it gives us hints, it gives us messages, and it starts off really quiet and getting really soft, and then it gets louder, and then it starts yelling in your face. And it took me, at least in this darkest hour of my life, getting yelled at in the face and having it shift my whole world before I realized what was going on. And it took me a while to recover from that. It took me a while to realize that, well, crap, what led me to here? What actually got me to this space that I want to go here, and wow, I'm not even going this way, I'm going that way. I'm going backwards. And it was a huge wake-up call. It probably took me 4 or 5 years to really kind of slowly change the trajectory so it's closer back to here again. And it's, I know for me, it was my own self-saboteur that for me, the obstacle, I think, was everything was going great. Everything was also almost to that level of success that I was dreaming for. Then all of a sudden it's like, pull the pin, flick the handle, and drop the grenade in the middle of all of that. And for me, the obstacle was, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. I'm not sure if I'm the right person to do this.
So you sabotaged yourself.
I sabotaged my whole world.
Yeah.
And it blew the whole thing up. And it took me several years to unpack that. It took me several years to determine, okay, so who and actually went through a marriage that started in the midst of that. And it wasn't till that was over, I feel, that I really woke up and started taking the steps to better myself, better my life, and start learning again and start laughing again. I got really serious to the point that my daughter pointed out after I got divorced through a 6.5-year marriage, that's the dad I remember, because I turned into an angry, stomping around, bitter person. And that's not who I want to be. That's not who I have been in the past. And that's not who I want to be in the future. But that's what I allowed to happen.
Yeah, it's super important that we unpack, sometimes we sabotage ourselves. Sometimes life happens and life gives us adversity. And then sometimes we want to grow and we choose adversity, right? And these are 3 different points approaching adversity. Obstacle, when we think of the term obstacle, we think of something that we don't want to be in our way. And that might be life happening to us. Or maybe it was Michael before he realized he sabotaged himself. He had not had that awareness. And now maybe he felt something happened to him when, hindsight, now he knows there were signs and he blew himself up. And we're going to talk in the future sessions about blame and things like that. But from this conversation point forward, we're going to focus on ownership. And even when things happen to us, while we may not be able to control all the variables, we control our reaction. We know that. And we control taking those steps forward. We control how we interpret what happens to us in life. Adversity or obstacle. The difference that Michael and I decided on, we hope you agree with us, right? This is our show, so this is what we were thinking, is obstacle really feels like something that was put there not by you. Adversity is something that you see and can be a tool to help you grow. And so when we talk about from obstacle to adversity, this is about coming to the point where you realize your potential is on the other side of that big hill in front of you. It's that willingness to look at it and not stay where you are because it's comfortable, because it's known, because it's secure, because ultimately it's not where you feel like you were meant to be. It's not your potential. And if you're facing the hill, there's a reason why. Trust the universe. There's something in front of you, and that something is for you. And when we can change our paradigm from obstacle to adversity, there's something that happens inside of us where we transform from fighting that uphill battle to looking at it like, this is a stair climb. I was meant for this. This was meant for me. This is what's going to tear those muscle fibers to make me stronger and to bring me closer to who I was meant to be. That's obstacle to adversity. Does that make sense? So when we look at this and we think about how this is working for us, what does it feel like? And when you did that visualization exercise, did you think about what that next step would be?
And so many times that next step is that thing comes up in her mind. No, that's not it. We push it aside. Something else comes up. No, that's not the next step I want to take. And that's what we're talking about, is that thing that comes to mind instantly because our intuition, our guidance, our heart, our spirit connection, something puts it up in our face and says, hey, this is your next step. And I know, at least for me, for a long time, is I just discounted that. No, that can't be right. I didn't trust my own judgment that in my whatever that source is that you tap into. I know mine tends to be kind of a cognitive idea that pops in my head, and I tended to discount that. So what is that thing that keeps coming up in your head? It's like, okay, that's the thing. Nope, I don't. Well, let's pull that back in front of us and say, okay, what is it going to take in order to overcome that? What is it going to take to accomplish that? What is it going to take to dissolve that? depending on what that particular thing that's in the way is. Because as
Yes,
if it's a
or-
belief that doesn't serve us, it's time to redefine it. It's time to understand what that belief is about. And yes, I just went from here at the surface all the way to the root for a reason, because I think that is, at least for me, the one of the most difficult journeys is actually going from that surface into, okay, where did that belief come from? That I can't do that I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too inexperienced, I'm too experienced, whatever that belief is. Where did that come from? And is it yours? Or is it someone else's? And I in Suzanne and I's conversations many times, it tends to come back to that, is what is that belief that if your belief that you are always healthy, then you take actions and you make decisions that you're always going to be leading towards your health. If you are always calling yourself stupid, you're always going to be taking actions and making choices that are going to lead you to being and acting as if you are stupid. So that to me is when we kind of go from this surfacey bit to the core.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, for all of you who are on this personal growth and development journey, you know, this is about root programming. You know, we are here to identify the bugs in our code. We are here to figure out ways that we can either overwrite, rewrite, delete, reprogram, right? This is what we're talking about. And when you're looking at adversity, how you perceive that adversity is determined by your beliefs. And that's where Michael's going. So, you know, you may see it as something that is overwhelming. You may see it as something so big it shuts you down. Or you could see it as a challenge. You could see it as a growth tool. And all of that is a result of your root programming. What are your beliefs? What is your identity? Are you a powerful force that impacts this world? Or are you a victim that's barely getting by? Are you a creator? Who are you? And why are you here? Right? So all of these beliefs that go deep, you know, people always make the distinction between things are practical or woo-woo. We are all of those things. There's nothing woo-woo about trying to fix your code, trying to become the best you can be. And whatever it takes to get there, that's beautiful. That's our journey. So Michael and I also, though, talk about the tools and what it means to have these tools and how to implement them. And Michael and I always talk about this. Michael's the tool guy. I mean, if you look at his website, that's one of his strengths. But when we broke down, how do we face adversity, what it's going to take, there were a few things that came to mind. Michael, what came to your mind first?
So the things that came to mind for me around this idea was really around, at least for me, was getting some of the stuff out of my head and out here into space. So that is, if I'm up against something, many times I need to write it out or type it out. And if that is I've done quite a few times that automatic journaling where you just keep writing and then go, you know, and set yourself a timer, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and just write. And even if it is, I do not know what to write right now, and I'm really kind of stuck in what I'm going on, until you actually start pouring things from your head onto the page. And it's amazing the things that come out of me whenever I do that, because it then makes that thing which is intangible into tangible. It actually, especially if there's just this impetus to create that and externalize it, it makes it more concrete for me. And it allows me to then go back and review it as if I'm reviewing a book or a movie or a poem or whatever, and go, wow, there's a whole lot of bad thinking in there. And I can actually judge it better whenever it's outside of me rather than when it's rattling around in my head. So that's one of the first things that came up for me. But the second piece around this, especially when it comes to that overwhelm of an obstacle, is the people around me have made the biggest difference. And the accountability groups that I'm in, I was on a men's team for a while, those friends that actually challenge me and don't let me slide by being static. That has been one of the things, that the idea of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That has allowed me to get out of my own way and actually maybe take my humility up a notch, because, well, guess what? They now see things from a different perspective. Oh, that's not a mountain, that's a molehill. Knock that off. So those are the two major things for me around tools that have helped me kind of overcome a lot of these obstacles that I've been up against.
Thank you for that. And I
What
think
about you?
for me, guys, for those of you who have been with us many times, forgive me, you've heard this before, but I faced some pretty grave physical adversity. I have a rare, potentially fatal blood disease. I've also faced some physical adversity, just when things happen. I've had a gun held to my head, or I've been deported from a country through no fault of my own, by the way. No criminal activity. But, when things happen, for me, the tool that has worked the best is honestly building in that meta moment of a pause. There is nothing more powerful than being able to put spatial distance between an incident and your reaction. And additionally, between an obstacle, even if it's a long-term obstacle, and where you are now. And what happens in that space matters. This is not a space where I space out and use that as idle time. I do not use it as distraction. I am at heart, and this is, I think, the part where Michael and I connect well, I'm an analyst. And I do, laser fast analysis that didn't always start laser fast. And when you start this process, it won't be that fast. But immediately, I take inventory. For military and defense people, especially spies and people like that, they're taught situational awareness. What is the context? Survey the scene. What is happening here? Take that moment to analyze it. And then you're going to take inventory. Where am I now? What is the real problem going on? Is it internal or external? Ask yourself. You have a series of questions, and these questions follow the methodology. Is the situation I'm feeling external or internal? Did I cause it, or was it something that I am facing? What are my potential avenues? And beyond that, though, I do an inventory of my beliefs. What do I believe about this situation? What do I believe about this obstacle? Who do I know I am? And right there, using our emotional GPS, using our situational awareness, using our inventory of beliefs, and being able to do this metacognitive analysis. This is what it takes, especially with a big obstacle in your way. Am I threatened by this because I haven't learned new technology forever? Am I threatened by this because I have a bad money story. Am I threatened by this because I have relational trauma? Why? Guys, we know. We know far more than we ever give ourselves credit for. And it's important when facing obstacles that we take that inventory. And I don't mean stay in it. Remember, I said this is like a very laser quick metacognitive analysis. What do we know? It's taking me seconds, not minutes. And initially, it might take longer. And initially, you may need to write it out. The methodology Michael was calling is in the writer's world is called stream of consciousness, where you start writing and you keep going. But you don't let things like the weather pop in, but you keep it going and you fearlessly go wherever your thoughts are leading. For me, it's that situational awareness, taking that inventory. And then beyond that, we take a skills inventory. Do I have the right skills I need to get to where I need to go? Whether you are transforming a relationship, building a business, or overcoming a rare, potentially fatal blood disease, do you have the skills? Do you have the knowledge? What are the resources you need? And this is a type of inventory that's going to serve you infinitely. And you can do this faster and faster as you go along. So the inventory you might need, it could be financial resources, it could be education, it could be people skills.
I think there's one other piece that you touched on and kind of passed through. So I want to bring us a little bit back to that as well.
Yeah, please.
Is we also need to take inventory of what we truly own about this situation. And honestly, because it's not 100%, it's rarely, if ever, zero, is what do you truly own about this process of the obstacle? How did you contribute to create it? And what do you have control or power in order to dissolve it? Because we don't have, at least in my life, I don't have ultimate power that I could just snap my fingers and wish things to be gone. But at the same time, knowing what levers I can pull, what buttons I can push, what paths I can take in order to actually overcome that obstacle is also really necessary as part of this metacognitive inventory process. We had one of our speakers on several months ago who talked about the two lists. There's the list of the things that I can control and the list of the things that God or the universe controls. And most of our stress and anxiety comes when we take something from this list and put it on ours. We have no control over. It's like, okay, no, you can keep that one. I can control this part, which tends to be our reactions, our thoughts, our actions. What steps are we taking? Our perception of what happened, what have you. And that, I think, needs to be part of this inventory. And in one of the processes on a men's team, when you're looking to clear things up, it's a way in a relationship to kind of help dissolve one of those obstacles is you actually state, this is what I saw. This is the objective reality. This is how I felt about it. And this is the story I made up to go with it. Owning that this is the story that I made up. Because that tends to be what helps dissolve any kind of strife, at least in that context. And then there's always a fourth step of how do you want it to be different in the future? But I think that, it's great that we can see that obstacle in there, but what is it that we want? What do we want it to be different? How do we want it to be different? So I think that all of those pieces are also necessary in that inventory
Absolutely.
process.
How do we want to be different? And when we said take an inventory of beliefs, do it on both sides. Where you are now, what your beliefs are, and rank them. And then that person at the end that you visualized with Michael's exercise in the beginning, that person, they're a little different from you, aren't they? They've achieved something. They've come through something. They've learned something. Take their inventory and understand what the difference is between who you are now, what you believe, and what you'd have to believe to become that person, because chances are they're not that same. And so you can look at that list of the person who's achieved, who's arrived. You'll know what their beliefs are and be able to rank them. You'll know what their priorities are and begin to rank them. And if you're honest with yourself, you're going to see the difference. And you can look at that achiever, you can look at your future self and understand these are the values and beliefs I need to prioritize that are not the same as how I'm operating today. And when we see that, we're able to embody them much easier. And if you talk to, the normal personal growth and development people about adversity, they're going to tell you to meditate. They're going to tell you to take ice baths, cold showers. They're going to tell you to, journal, and all those things are great. But without this cognitive analysis, without this, and what else are you doing all of this analysis for? The skills inventory, the resource inventory, that is helping you arrive at the decision-making point of what is my first best step? What is my next best step? What are the series of steps I can take to build momentum to avalanche into my dreams? You're going to build that momentum. You're going to build that muscle memory. And you're going to tear muscle. So it may not always feel great along the way.
So one other point that I know that I had in my notes here that I want to make sure that we cover as well is I had a conversation with one of my clients recently, and she's like, well, I wish I could just easily, like, all these obstacles wouldn't be in my way anymore. That I wish that I didn't have any obstacles, that there weren't any more challenges. And I also at the same time want to get into flow. This sense, and we talked about this last year, is that feeling of dropping into the situation and you lose track of time and just things work step by step as if they're laid out in front of you. And unfortunately, according to the research that I've read into, is in order to get into flow, there needs to be an obstacle. There needs to be something that you overcome. It is a prerequisite to get to that space. If you're doing something easy, our brain becomes bored. Our spirit becomes detached from that particular thing because it's not a challenge anymore.
Yeah.
So it's that idea of, we've taken the inventory. We know what skills we want to have. We know what beliefs we want to create, and then being willing to tackle that difficult thing that's going to require that and take that in stride with the steps we want to in order to get there, or at least what we're going to make up is our next step in order to get there.
That's right, Michael. And I think I remember that research you're talking about, and they said, no, it's not the hardest level. It's actually the level where you're learning. The hardest level makes you feel overwhelmed and can shut you down. And that's not the goal, guys. So we're not telling you to bite the elephant, initially, but it is
Right.
a level of learning that is going to challenge you, right? So it's still an uphill battle. Wasn't that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
I have to go. I
Yes.
want to thank you for this wonderful session, and I learned a lot. And best of
Thank
luck
you for coming.
program. I'll keep following you guys.
Thank you for sharing your morning.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So
So
yes.
So as we kind of touch on a lot of these ideas, I think that we are coming here at the top of the hour, and I want to kind of wrap up as well. And this is just the beginning of this year that we are starting, and just kind of letting you know that this is where we started. This is that hard thing. This is that adversity that we chose for our story arc for this coming year. And because it's the idea of, if you're out running or even out walking and you come up to a hill, you don't slow down, you actually run up the hill, you actually take on that hard thing and do it as long as you can, do it, take on that thing that is that it's in that safety zone, but not your comfort zone, and not in this area that's so wide that it's overwhelming and there's no way you can get it. So just to give you a sense of kind of some of the other subjects we're going to be talking about this year. Next month, we're talking about from shame to compassion, followed up with from blame to ownership, and then apathy to feeling. Just to give you a sense of what adversity we are actually putting in front of ourselves in order to talk about, because these are some of those items that are not often discussed, because we want to actually have these conversations that go deeper. That is, yes, I bring tools to this. We bring concepts and questions, and it's an opportunity for you to unfold and discover and elevate your mindset. That's why we chose the name of our companionship here. Our impetus, our journey is the Elevation Mindset Summit. We look forward to seeing you. We're going to be doing this the last Saturday of every month of the year. So please look on your calendar and carve out time at 11 a.m. Eastern time on the last Saturday of every month of this year. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Suzanne?
Guys, do hard things. Do hard things. That's what it's about. That's how we grow. And sorry, we didn't start off easy.
Another thing we want to remind you of as well is, if it's in your way, you were made, you were built, you have actually made decisions up to this point to take on that particular obstacle. You were made for this, and you've got this. And the last little piece, which Suzanne touched on, is that when you're in that space, that all of a sudden you feel that overwhelm. Sometimes, in order to really move through that obstacle, you do need to take that half a step back, look at the bigger picture, and take that breath, take that pause to see what perspective looks like from a slightly different direction. You may see that thing that seemed right up in your face is actually far in the distance, or that thing that actually seems huge is because it's in your face instead of in the distance.
That's true, guys. The bigger it is, the closer it is. Guys, that's something. Pay attention.
And if you want to continue listening to or being involved in these conversations, please go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. So like I said, we're going to be doing these once a month, and we're going to be putting out some information each month about each of these subjects we're talking about. So the website for that is elevateyourbest.com/elevation-mindset. Join our newsletter so you can learn about the upcoming subjects that we're talking about. We're going to be putting out a calendar in the next week or two, so you know exactly what subject we're actually talking about for the year. We thank you for spending this time with us on a Saturday morning, or whatever you're watching the replay of this. My name is Michael Danklos of Elevate Your Best.
Thank you, guys. Great to see you.